Psalms 127 is a psalm that is commonly quoted. A lot of times for gospel prosperity, as well as family planning, is a big one for this psalm, basically. Those are some blessings of God that we're going to realize in this one. Now, this one actually comes from Solomon. Now, if anybody understands about family planning, it should be Solomon. He had a whole lot of children, he had a whole lot of wives and concubines and things. And so this is interesting that we get a psalm from him. And this is a psalm of ascension, so going to the temple, even though he restored the temple and rebuilt it. That Solomon's temple is the beginning of the first temple period, but it's not. It's almost ironic that the temple means family and relationships and things, but Solomon did the opposite, unfortunately, in his life. So really, really some interesting challenges when we think about what made up the circumstances around this psalm. But it's a good psalm, so let's jump in and get reading it to help us learn some more. Now, verse 1, except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. Except the Lord keep the city, the watchman waketh but in vain. So he's mentioning in here basically, if you do not have God in everything you do, then your efforts aren't as valuable as they could be. And I like this principle. I think this is an important one for us to look at. When we pray and ask God to help us in our lives, we are allowing him to be a part of different parts of our life. And that's good. The more we put him into our life and have him, the better. So most likely this psalm was one written earlier in Solomon's reign, not later in his reign, because he kind of violates some of these terms later on, basically. So verse 2 is kind of similar to verse 1. It says, it is vain for you to rise up early, to sit up late, to eat the bread of sorrows, for so he giveth his beloved sleep. So this is, again, putting God in your life. God is helping you. He wants to bless you. Let him help you. Let him bless you. The more you put him in your life, the better. Otherwise, all your efforts are not helping you in the long run. Not so much in this life. You can do a lot of your own efforts to help you in this life. By getting into the next life, you want to have God as a part of that, basically. It's a really important thing. Verse 3, and the rest of this is where we get into the family planning side. Verse 3, lo, children are an heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. So mentioning that having children is a reward. It is a blessing of God to have children, to raise children, and to work with them. Now, the New Revised Bible actually, instead of the word children, uses the word son or sons. Historically, back then, having a son was seen as a blessing of God. Because back then, when a son got married, he brought his wife with him to the family. So it expanded your family. Whereas if you had daughters, they went to their husbands' families and you lost your family. Basically, it was just down to you and your wife. So children and the ability to work on your farm, on your estate, was seen as a valuable asset for wealth building back then, because you could have more crops, you could have more animals, which was how they measured wealth. So if you lost all the people in your family shrunk, you severely limited your ability to have wealth. So that's where sons were seen as more favorable historically, but I like that they use the word children rather, because I believe having daughters is equally as important, because we don't, our interpretation in the modern world about what is wealth and those opportunities is very different than what they had back then. So the word children, I think, is more appropriate to our day and age than an ancient interpretation of sons. Now, verse 4, as arrows are in the hand of a mighty man, so are the children of the youth. So again, this idea that when you have children, they are an asset to you. They are very valuable to you. Just like if you have an archer and they have arrows, they can get a lot accomplished. If they have no arrows in their quiver, then an archer is not an archer anymore, basically. They're just somebody holding a bow. So arrows are seen as a resource. So children are seen as a resource to help a family out. Now, verse 5, happy is the man that hath his quiver full of them. They shall not be ashamed, but they shall speak with the enemies in the gate. So again, if you have enemies, you're pretty confident. If you've got a quiver full of arrows, you know you're going to be safe to talk with them because you've got protection. This would be like saying we have a gun that is loaded today to protect ourselves with. We're comfortable talking with people that we see as enemies because we have a way to defend ourselves. And children this is this analogy. If we have children, we have an opportunity to have more help, have more opportunities because of that. So that's kind of what they're getting at in 127, that children are a blessing of God to help us in our life. And I would say so. I'd agree absolutely with that. And I look forward to your comments too on this one. What do you think? Are children a blessing, or are they a curse to us from God? We'll look forward to hearing that discussion in the comments, and then we'll see you in the next psalm.